You're live, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the meeting.
Good morning.
Rather quick. Good morning. You want to call the roll, please?
Superintendent Choudhury.
Present.
Courtney League as designee for Secretary Churchill.
Present.
Mr. Darenberg is absent. Ms. Eberhardt is absent. Mr. Gibbons.
Here.
Ms. Lala.
Here.
Mr. Lombardo is absent. Michael Bayer as designee for Secretary McCord.
Present.
And Chair Casemeyer.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any revisions to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Any public comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I just wanted to mention that Courtney League's here today representing Secretary Churchill, who had some minor surgery yesterday, so we wish him well. And we'll now continue. Alex, you want to do a consent agenda, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, and thank you. Today's consent agenda begins with approval of the minutes. We have 41 contract awards on the agenda today, all essentially standard type. We have a few revisions to contracts and some adjustments to allocations. I have no comments to add on these. Any questions?
Any questions on items A through G? Alex, do you want to say anything about H and I at all? Two informational issues?
No, and these are both essentially pro forma facility status changes, just one of those, and also update on the Built to Learn project. We do not have any major additions to the Built to Learn pipeline at the moment.
Okay.
We will in future meetings, but nothing today. Thank you.
Do I hear a motion that we approve the consent agenda items A through I?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, item 2, COMAR revisions. Cassandra?
So good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. This item is a very minor COMAR change that mirrors a statutory requirement that was included in this year's House Bill 1290. The language that we've included is almost word for word out of statute, so we would be required to adhere to it whether or not it was in COMAR. This just cleans up our regulations to include all of the program requirements specifically around adjacent schools. And I can stand for questions.
Any questions for Cassandra? Do we have to take some action on your comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can read the motion.
Yes, please.
The motion is to approve amendments to COMAR 1439-0206 as presented in this item and to authorize staff to make additional technical edits as necessary. The proposed COMAR revisions will be published in the Maryland Register and will be open for a public comment period of at least 30 days before returning to the IAC for final approval.
Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
A second.
Thank you, Mr. Baer. Any more discussion on COMAR revisions motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Item 3, Cassandra, pass-through grant administrator procedures guide revisions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After review of the statute, Senate Bill 291, the capital budget that created the pass-through grant, we became aware of a need to clarify the procedures that you all had adopted to make it clear that projects funded with pass-through grant funding could be combined with other funding sources that was missing from the first adoption of the APG. In order to ensure that the local match requirement is met from those other funding sources, we're recommending in the revisions that you'll see in item 3 that that the other funding sources be exhausted first and that the PTG funding be added on top of those. We're also clarifying in these recommendations that PTG funds can be applied to projects that have already been approved by the IAC. Those funds cannot supplant the local match. So these are essentially just clarifications to the APG you had already approved, and I can read the motion when you're ready.
Please, go ahead and read it.
The motion is to approve revisions to the pass-through grant administrative procedures guide to provide clarification on eligible projects.
Do I hear a favorable motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Any more discussion on the pass-through grant guide revision? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you all very much. Item 4, Healthy School Facility Fund Administrative Procedures Revision. Hi, Arabia.
Hi, good morning. Grants administered through the Healthy Schools Facility Fund program are used for capital projects that improve the health of school facilities. The procedures guide currently in place for this program excludes funding any projects in gymnasiums. The proposed modifications to the Administrative Procedures Guide, which can be found on page 116 of your meeting packet, section 7.7, is to clarify that only heating, ventilation, and air conditioning projects in gymnasiums and auditoriums are ineligible expenses, which broadens the eligible project category to include roof and air quality remediation projects in those areas. Staff of the IAC understands that HVAC systems in all areas of a school building are necessary, but with limited funding and the enormous needs across Maryland, limiting eligibility in spaces that can go unused for a few days a year allows the funding to flow more rapidly to educational spaces that require immediate remediation. For this fiscal year, the IAC received 109 funding requests from 16 LEAs, of which 3 projects were canceled, totaling $99 million. With that being said, there is $45 million available through this program for distribution to LEAs, with the exception of Baltimore City. There is a statutory requirement that the remaining $45 million be appropriated for projects in Baltimore City Public Schools and through a separate allocation process. So those will be presented to the IAC at a later date. To address the proposed modification and state fiscal constraints, staff are prepared to work with any LEA impacted by this decision to determine another funding source that will be appropriate, as HVAC projects and gyms are eligible through almost every other program administered by the IAC. We stand for questions.
You want to read the motion first, Arabia?
Yes. To approve the revisions to the Healthy Schools Facility Fund Administrative Procedures Guide to provide clarification on ineligible gymnasium and auditorium heating, ventilation, and air conditioning related projects.
We hear a motion for approval.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Second.
Any questions for Arabia about the comments you just made about air conditioning in the Healthy School Fund? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Alex or Cassandra, anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I have nothing else.
This may be an all-time quick meeting for us in the last couple of years. Okay.
By the size of my notebook, I can tell it was going to be. They're usually thicker notebooks.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I hear a motion, we adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming. See you next month.
See you next.
Bye.